Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone online, and welcome again to our next session of the Regional Radio Communication Seminar for the Americas 2020, being jointly hosted by the International Telecommunication Union and the Caribbean Telecommunication Union here on Zoom video conferencing. The CTU, Caribbean Telecoms Union, is hosting the webinar. I am Nigel Casimir, the telecommunications specialist at the CTU. And before we get started, again, I'll share a few tips so we can participate successfully. Remember, the next time you log in, please log in with your information in this order: first name, last name, organization, you can use an abbreviation, and country, you can use an abbreviation again. And I suggest using the two-letter country code top level domain. So, for example, in my case, I have signed in as Nigel Casimir, CTU, TT for Trinidad and Tobago, being based here at the CTU Secretariat in Port of Spain. Signing in like that would make you easily identifiable for entry to the webinar and also when posing questions and for any interventions if possible. During the presentations, we ask that you post your questions in the Q&A box in order for them to be seen and efficiently addressed. The Q&A box is accessible by clicking the Q&A button located at the bottom of your Zoom window. And using the Q&A is especially important for this seminar because we have hundreds of persons registered and there will be limited opportunities for verbal interventions. You can use the chat button also at the bottom of the Zoom window for sharing general comments and information with panelists and or attendees. Be careful though to select who your desired recipients are. The default setting for chat is to all panelists only. So if you want to send your chat and share it with all attendees, you have to select all panelists and attendees. The presentation slides are and would be posted on the event website, on the ITU website, on the event web page, I should say, on the ITU website. And this seminar would continue every weekday at this time for the next 2 weeks, meaning during this week and next week. Recordings of the sessions, we plan to post recordings of the sessions on the initially on the CTU YouTube channel. So you should start seeing recordings become available between today and tomorrow. And I also expect that there will be the recordings posted eventually on ITU channels as well. So you will get information on those in due course. For us to start today, I will hand over to my colleague my colleague coordinator at the ITU, Mr. Joaquin Restrepo. He will initially get us going by addressing some of the outstanding questions that we have coming forward from the previous days. So I wish all a happy and edifying seminar today. So Joaquin, please.
Thank you, Nigel. First, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are seeing.
Yes. Yes. First, I am glad to inform that we have already allowed the list of abbreviations. So this is our website. And on the section download resources, at the end, you find out the list of abbreviations. When you click there, you are going to download a zip file containing 3 PDF, each PDF with the list of abbreviation in English, French, and Spanish respectively. Just a little mention, the list of abbreviation is by alphabetic order in English. Then I will apologize because in Spanish and French, maybe you find out that the order is not the same, but because we have preserved the order in English because, as you know, it's the most common use of these abbreviations. Saying that, regarding the topic related to the human influence of electromagnetic field on humans, we had explained within I2R, we are performing monitoring studies about it. And for the level considered for that, we follow the recommendation of the International Commission of Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, ICNRP by its acronym. I had just shown you Monday the latest recommendation and report recently issued about this topic. And of course, our broadcasting and mobile study group, they consider all this level when defining the output power of the different standards. All other matters related to that, because remember that these electromagnetic fields, the source for that is not only radio communication. We have other source of that. That could be the electrical power, electrical appliance, and so on. For that, I ask, please visit, I'm going to show you the I2T sector in standardization. You go to our site, standardization, and there, when you go down, you have the quick links and you go to this section, human specific to electromagnetic fields. And you click there, and you will find out all the information about the activities that we are performing as I2U and led by I2T. Of course, we work in duly coordination with this study group 5, is the I2T study group 5, taking care of that. Then we complement each other. But please have in mind that the source of electromagnetic field is not only radio communication. That's why the other topics are handled by I2T. That first, second point. The other point was related to hubs. Just to make some regulatory precision. First, remember that, sorry.
Yeah, just before you go on to HAPS, it would help too if you could post this link in the chat.
Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry for, yeah, I will do it on the chat, and I'm going to give this link. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Let me start sharing to avoid consuming resources. Then, on the hubs, just some regulatory precision. First, I refer to the provision number 166A, that is the specific definition of hubs as a station. High altitude platform station is a station located on an altitude of 20 to 50 kilometers and a specific nominal fixed point to relative Earth. And following that, we have then the provision 423 in page 55. In the provision 423, we indicate very clear, transmission to or from high altitude platform stations shall be limited to one specifically identified in Article 5. Then, first point to consider, you don't find hubs within the main body of the table of frequency in Article 5, because remember that we allocate services with demands to services, not to stations. And a hub is a station. Then, once a frequency is allocated to a fixed services, it could be then through identification and designation be used by hubs. And we have two cases. The common case, let's say, for example, on the page 170, give me just a minute. The allocation of the spectrum in this band is designated for the number of 552A, the allocation of the fixed service in the band 47.2, 47.5 gigahertz, etc., is designated for the use of high altitude platforms. Then basically, the main principle of hub is to be used to be authorized to identification of designation among the different bands for fixed service. Nonetheless, we have currently the exception that is contained on the provision, the footnote 53AA, it's in page 115. And it's like in region 1 and 3, these bands, basically 1.8 gigahertz and 2 gigahertz, different, some different between region 1 and region 2. This band may be used by hub station and base station to provide mobile telecommunications. Then, and I get back to some point to be considered, as I had explained it, Nikolai yesterday. One of the points of the next conference agenda is to consider, in accordance with resolution of the pertinent, the use of hubs as INT base station. Then this use is already considered through a full node for these bands, for the bands contained in that full node. And during the conference, they are going to consider additional bands to do that. And then, if approved by the conference, then we will have a larger scope of the use of hubs. And regarding IMT, there are several questions about band, etc. First, have in mind that IMT concept encompasses all the generations of IMT. IMT 2000, IMT Advanced, IMT 2020. That's why within the radio regulation, when you have for a mobile service, an allocation for mobile service identified for IMT, you are not going to find a specific family of IMT. And that is very useful for administration because it facilitates the transitions. I mean, you have something like 3G using, let's say, 3.5 gigahertz. What could you imagine if we had defined a different band to do the transition? Then you not only need to modify the infrastructure, the equipment, and so on, but also changing the band. Then in that sense, we are neutral. The bands identified for IMT can be used for any generation. And it's currently what countries are doing. 3G, 4G, 5G, then this evolutionary generation is doing within the same frequencies. It's true that the recent frequencies identified for INT in the last conference, basically the millimeter waves, when you see the architecture of the 5G or 5G20, that's true that the ultra low latency application and Internet of Things, this millimeter wave could fit pretty well to that. But regulatory point of view, there's no exclusivity. 5G can also use frequencies below 3 gigahertz, below 3.5 gigahertz. As a matter of fact, the projects in deployment currently are also using the frequencies. And theoretically, well, there's maybe it's most a business case, but theoretically, if some administration wishes to use the millimeter waves to deploy 4G, they could do it. There's no nothing on the regulation impeding that. Now, the radio regulation, basically the table deals only with the allocations. Related to the channeling, equivalent to allotment, and the standard, we had explained, the radio regulations is neutral, with the exception containing on the appendix explained by Nikolai and today by my colleague, with some exceptions. In general, the principle is that the radio regulation doesn't make allotments, neither assignments. Administration can do it, and of course, I2R is working on that sense through the study groups, through the recommendations, trying to define and if possible establishing consensus about how to channeling the different bands, and not only for INT, that's valid for mobile, for fixed, for broadcasting, and also defining possible standards. But this part of definition of standards and channeling is through recommendation that are not compulsory because they are not part of the radio regulation, and that in the full respect of the sovereignty of the administration about how they assign the spectrum. Saying that, now I have the pleasure to introduce you my colleague Uwe Lowenstein. He is the study group, the counselor for the study group 5, including the so popular working party 5D, and he's going to update us about precisely the current situation of INT 2020. Please, Uwe, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Joaquin, and thank you also for inviting me here. My name is Uwe Löwenstein. As Joaquin said, I'm the Study Group 5 counselor. And as we had last week finished the Working Party 5D meeting, I think I have the latest information for you here regarding IMT 2020. And so to start by that, I would provide to you a small presentation I have prepared, and which shows, you should see it now, the overall timing of the specification for the terrestrial radar interface of IMT 2020 according to the ITU process. You see, this is a multi-year process, and to explain to you where we are currently now, I mean, from time-wise, we are here in July 2020 towards the end. What happened so far? Briefly allow me to introduce the 4 steps which can be seen here. So first, and this has happened before the previous World Radio Conference, we had the vision and the definition of IMT 2020, followed of course by defining the requirements and in particular the evaluation criteria. Back at that time, between the period WRC 15 and WRC 19, also the candidate technologies have prepared and emerged, which were discussed at a workshop in Munich in autumn 2017, following the evaluation period and consensus building. And this is where we actually are. So at the last meeting of Working Party 5D, which just finished last week, we achieved the completion and conclusion of steps 5 to 7 of the IMT 2020 process for the first release of the IMT 2020 specifications. We have achieved that the candidate technologies submitted by 3GPP, this includes the one from China and Korea, and TSDSI have successfully passed to the following step 8 of the IMT process, which is the preparation of the final specification, as you can see here. And this is what's going to happen from now on in the next meeting of Working Party 5D, which is meeting number 36 happening in October this year. And then we have a last, let's say, step, which is the approval by ITU member states, which will be performed by Study Group 5. And only then we will have the according specifications approved and available. So Joaquin said to me it should be quite brief. So having explained to you that, I'm happy to cover any further questions. And additionally, we will also post the link you will see now on the left-hand side, but in a vertical direction for you, where you can find all information and material we have provided following the last week's Working Party 5D meeting.
Again, if that link could be posted into the chat box.
I will do.
To all the all panelists and attendees.
I will certainly do so.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now for our presentation, for our seminar today, we have 3 presentations carded before the break and 2 for after the break. Given that we've had this preamble, it means that we are going to have, I guess, to move a little more quickly through the presentations so that we don't fall too far behind. So as your questions arise, please post them in the Q&A as requested, and we will address them as expeditiously as possible. But I think we probably need to be sure that we allow the presenters to get through their materials before we run out of time. Okay, so organizing this set of presentations, which will be from the Radio Communications Bureau Space Services departments, is Ms. Mehtap Dufour, and I will hand over now to Mehtap to introduce their presentations, and I think she is actually the first presenter. So Mehtap, please go ahead.
Give me 1 second. I'll share my screen. Okay. Do you see my screen, Nigel?
No, not yet. Maybe you have to click share.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start from
Right.
the slide. It's okay now, I guess.
Yes, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this session of the space, we are diving to space, and I will explain you the Orbit Spectrum International Regulatory Framework. Everything has started with Sputnik, launched on October 1957. Just after 6 years later, an extraordinary administrative radio conference allocated frequency bands for space radio communication purposes. This conference took place in Geneva, 7 October to 8 November in 1963. And from that time and the satellites, now it's evolved a lot. And we are using the satellites in our daily lives, and we use them is for meteorological purposes, for space research, and it is changed a lot, and it's getting more and more complicated. So what to do? What we are doing, we are using radio regulations to use all those frequency bands, interference-free frequency bands, yeah. And through this time, up to now, we had a number of international treaties. One of the international treaty in 1967 was to use the Outer Space Treaty. And also a rescue agreement has been done. It's rescue the astronauts and return of the astronauts. It was in 1968. And also a treaty has been signed, Liability Convention, in 1972. Every administration or member states, we can say that is, they are responsible from the objects then sent to the space. They have to control the objects that is sent to the space. And this was agreed by the 1972 Liability Convention. And registration convention also, objects launched into the outer space, they need to be recorded, and this was the agreement also. And also on the moon and other celestial bodies, activities has been signed by the Moon Treaty in 1979. Where are the satellites? Satellites, they are LEO, MEO, GEO, geostationary satellites, or Molniya satellites. Here are, you see that is the frequency bands that used practically, it's these bands that are used commonly. L band, S band, C band, X, KU, KM. As you know, that is the communication in the space. Satellite communication has risk of interference during the operation. So what to do is a duty given to ITU for the regulation of the frequency bands usage is for the radio frequency spectrum allocation and the frequency assignments, recording the frequency assignments, and how to eliminate interference. And this has been regulated by ITU. And ITU has in the Constitution, when we look to the Article 44, it's, as you know, that it's the orbit spectrum resources are limited resources, and how we will use this rationally, efficiently, economically, and equitable access is defined in Article 44. And Article 45 is eliminating the harmful interference. This, as you know, that is World Radio Communication Conferences has been done almost every 4 years. And these are the intergovernmental treaty governing the orbit spectrum usage by member states. It defines the rights and obligations of the member states, and the frequency assignments is recorded in the MIF, and also complemented by the rules of procedures by the Radio Regulation Board. How we ensure the equitable access, regulatory and technical solutions, we do have the allocation, coordination, and also bring the power limits and recording in the MIF and monitoring. And for the frequency assignments to be recorded in the MIF, we do have two approaches, and planned approach and non-planned approach. And after this presentation, I will explain you how to do the coordination in the non-planned band. And after my presentation, my colleague will explain you for the planned band usage also. Here are the key points. Radio regulations is essential and international treaty. Any information, if you need, please contact this email. Thank you. This completes my first presentation. And I have another presentation for you. Now I will difficult to shift to the second presentation. Okay.
Just back to.
Sorry, I cannot get back to my screen. It's black. Okay, I got it. I think it's taking a little bit time. All right.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. All right.
Right.
Sorry for the confusion. Okay, now I will explain you for the coordination and notification procedures for non-planned space services. As you know, that is frequency bands is planned and non-planned like terrestrial services. But now I will explain you for space services and non-planned band. In order to explain this, here are the contents. What I will explain you is the coordination approach, examination of coordination request. And during the coordination request, we do have some publications, CRC, CRD, CRE, and how to record in the MIF. And due diligence information, I will talk about it, resolution 49, resolution 552, and also BR actions and regulatory time limit. What are the mechanisms to achieve the allocation limits, licensing, monitoring is planned approach and the coordinated use. For the coordinated use, first come, first served basis, our aim is to have the frequency assignments interference-free option. Elements for coordination approach is publish planned use for satellite network, fulfill requirements defined in radio regulations, negotiate with the coordinate with the concerned administrations, get the agreements, and afterwards record the frequency assignments in the MIF. There are frequency bands in the table of frequency allocation and doesn't require the coordination procedures. For this is the approach is first you submit to ITU all the related information for advanced publication information. It is a general description of the satellite, and for this there is no priority and no examination on the advanced publication information. And thereafter we have the notification information before the end of the regulatory deadline. You need to submit notification information for this satellite network. What is advanced publication information? It is defined in radio regulation, volume 1, section 1, article 9. It is general description, GSO or non-GSO, and it is APA publication. And with this publication, regulatory time limit, 7 years, it is starting. For this advanced publication, there's no priority, as I explained, no examination. And some administration, they may have some concerns about the coming satellite, and they may send their comments, and these comments will be published in APB. Let's look to the coordination frequency assignments that requires the coordination procedures. For this case, for these bands, you need to submit the coordination information. And in this coordination information, it is advanced publication information will be extracted from there. And this is also, with receiving this coordination information means that it's already 7 years regulatory time, it is starting. And you do have time to bring into use and to coordinate your frequency assignments 7 years. And before the end of the 7 years, you need to submit the notification information that you finalized your satellite that you would like to use. All frequency assignments is hopefully will be registered in the MIF. Where we find the coordination procedures, it is in Volume 1, Radio Regulations, Section 2, Article 9. It contains almost all forms of coordination, geostationary and non-geostationary, Earth stations and terrestrial stations. And however, there are some provisions that is not contained in this section. For example, with respect to the planned services, we need to go to Article 7 of Appendix 30 and Appendix 30A. And for the bands that is broadcasting satellite services in 2.6 gigahertz with respect to terrestrial services, those procedures is described in Resolution 539. Okay, how we submit the coordination information? Okay, we need to find all the characteristics, technical information. It is listed in the Volume 2 of Radio Regulations and Appendix 4. There, every characteristics being captured, and you are sending this information, submitting to BR. And from there, Radio Communication Bureau, we will take and we will go through the technical and regulatory examinations. With this submission of the coordination information, regulatory clock is starting, 7 years is starting. Findings will be given under 935 and 936. When I say 935, 936, what are they? Let's have a look in detail. 935 examination is the examination with respect to the in conformity table of frequency allocation and also other provisions listed in rules of procedures under 1131 examination. For the favorable findings under 1131, we will go and we will do the further examinations. But for unfavorable findings, we will split and we won't go further examination. What is 936 examination? 936 examination is the coordination requirement. It is with respect to the further coordination requirements with respect to GSO to GSO, GSO to non-GSO. Here you see the list of the provisions that requires that type of coordination. And also we are identifying the list of satellite networks also. Once you see here, we look here, as you see that these are the forms of coordination. What you see here is you know, NGSO may interfere to GSO, may interfere to terrestrial services or GSO via through the communication. That's we need to take, and we need to show that every type of interference has been under control for the interference-free operation. Okay, here you see the list of forms of coordination types, and before bringing into use, you need to effect, these are the coordination provisions that you need to effect with the concerned administrations. Also, there are footnotes that we need to be careful. When we look to the rules of procedures, when we look to the table of frequency allocation, it has some footnotes. In these footnotes, there are some references to the 911A or 921. When we look to the first footnote, 5.208, it is referring to the 911A. Mobile satellite service is subject to coordination 911A. Okay, and how we can find more details related coordination provision. So we can go to the rules of procedures in table, and table 911A gives us more detail how we will coordinate with respect to terrestrial, non-GSR, and so on. We can find more detailed information over there. And also in the table of frequency allocation, we do have some reference in the footnotes. We have reference to 921 also. At the bottom of the screen, you see that is, for example, 5.286 is space operation and space research service in this band is requires the 921 coordination. As I explained you in my previous presentation, is reference to 911A. Here is we go to the rules of procedures, table 911A, and here is you see that is the concerned band and related footnote and the type of services. And in column 5, you see that is type of provision you need to do with the administrations and equally applying terrestrial services in column 6. More detailed information you can find over there. Where are the references, criteria, and methods for identification of coordination? It is in radio regulations, volume 2, appendix 5, table 5.1 will give us forms of coordination, frequency bounds, and threshold conditions. When we look here, for example, we see that is, for example, 9.7 coordination means that geostationary satellite with respect to geostationary satellites requires this type of coordination. It is applying coordination arc. It is ±7 or ±6, or it is applying delta T over T calculation. More details means threshold condition you can find in appendix 5, table 5.1. Publication of CRC. Upon receipt of coordination information from you, Bureau is making the necessary examination. It's making first is 1131 examination, and also afterwards we are identifying the coordination requirements is with respect to 936, and all forms of coordination with respect to administrations has been identified, and also potentially affected administrations for some forms of coordination. For information only 9.36.1, and also in order to assist to the administration, list of satellite networks also has been provided in CRC special section. Here you see that is how it looks like a CRC special section. This is the first page. On the left hand side, the bottom part, you see there's forms of coordination for this special section and for this satellite network. If we go to the further pages, we see that is summary of the coordination requirements. It is for every type of provision, and required administrations is listed. And further down in table 2, we see that is potentially affected administrations listed according to the provisions. And if we go further to the special section, we also find some useful information that is, for example, for this band under the 1131 examination, it's given unfavorable finding. It is given unfavorable finding because of the power flux density, power levels is exceeded the defined level in 2116. In Article 2116 is exceeding, therefore it's given unfavorable finding. Also, there are some favorable findings with some conditions it's giving for steerable beam, etc. You can find those information. And also, you can see the coordination requirements at group level also. Here, I would like to mention about 21.4 and 22 GHz broadcasting satellite services. It's previously, we were publishing for this band, a separate special section was called CRF. It's no longer published separately. If you have submitted this frequency bands also, it will be, the results will be inside the CRC special section. However, when the special procedure under resolution 553 has been requested, the notice still will be treated independently and will be published in CRF. We still continue with the CRC. As you see, that is for this BSS band, it's, you know, according to resolution 554, the administrations has been listed. And further down, you can find more information that is for this satellite network. It's with respect to plan also needs to coordinate, Appendix 30, Appendix 30A. You can find the list of the administrations also. If we go further down for the CRC publication, we find the list of the satellite networks, case 1, case 2. For case 1 is the wanted and interfering networks sharing the same frequency band in the same direction of transmission. In case 2, the same frequency band in the opposite direction. The list of the administration satellite networks has been listed here. In order to assist to the administrations during the coordination, this information has been provided. And also similarly, you can find the satellite networks listed according to plan band, and also for the BSS band, resolution 554 also, you can find those information. And also potentially affected administrations at group level also is, you can see here. Final coordination requirement, how it is working, let's look at here. If there is a frequency band that applies delta T over T and PFD mask, for this, the publication is final. There won't be any more comment on this. However, for the bands that is coordination arc is applies, and for this administrations may request the inclusion or exclusion, 941, 942, they may further comment to the publication. And also for the band 21.4, 22 GHz, BSS application applies the coordination arc plus PFD mask. For this band, you cannot comment, further comment. Please keep in your mind that 941 does not apply. This is the final, finalized version, no more comments. And for the provisions from 911 to 914, 921 is, for this you can do the comments under 952. We will go more details on this. It's how you comment on the CRC publications. An administration having received a request for coordination upon the publication of the CRC special section shall examine, and if there is an interference or causing the interference, its own assignments, inform the requesting administration within 4 months upon the publication in the BRFIC, that special section. It's their agreement or disagreement. If there is a disagreement, giving the reasons how that's so. According to 953A CRD publication, it's upon the publication of the CRC special section, you may give your disagreement within 4 months. There is a deadline. You have to be careful for this. However, giving your disagreement by using SpaceCom, this doesn't mean that you are giving your agreement. All the administrations that they gave their disagreements within 4 months through the SpaceCom software, that will be listed, and afterwards we will publish CRD. This CRD publication will be used after during the notification procedure for this satellite network. Responsible administration needs to complete all the forms of coordination listed in CRD with the objecting or disagreeing administrations. It will be verified during the notification stage for this band. Let's have a look to the spatial section CRD. It is very similar to the CRC spatial section. As you see here on the left-hand side, we see the forms of coordination is required. And further down in table 1, we see at the provision level, all the coordination required administrations is listed. And further down, we see at group level, the list of the administrations we see. And there is another comments also. It is called CRE publication under provision number 942. And the administrations, they may comment on the CRC. They may think that their satellite network may be affected from this incoming satellite network. For example, if within the coordination arc, the administrations is listed, but beyond the coordination arc, their satellite network may be affected. So you are supposed to prove this using the data TOT calculation. It's showing that there is an increase, potential interference. So this will be informed to the administration and VR, and we will list this and we will publish the CRE publication. And please keep in your mind that during the coordination procedure, administrations can include networks also upon their mutual agreement. Here is the CRE spatial section, how it looks like, very similar to the CRC also. And here you see the list of administrations according to the provisions, and list of the satellite networks and administrations at group level. You can find the information. How it works, coordination notification procedure for Earth station coordination. Earth station coordination is slightly different than the satellite networks. An administration would like to use an Earth station. First of all, they need to create a coordination contour, and upon creation of the coordination contour, they need to identify the affected or affecting administrations within the coordination contour, and they need to communicate to those administrations and send all data concerning to their Earth stations to that administrations, and they need to finalize the coordination. During this stage, only between two administrations, they are not communicating to BR. However, in order to get the international recognition to the frequency assignments of this Earth station, upon the completion of coordination, they are notifying to ITU for those assignments to be recorded in the MIF and bringing into use by planned date. before bringing into use and notify in cases shall affect the coordinations. And this is the types of coordination for the Earth stations is listed here, provisions. And coordination contour, once we say how it looks like, yeah. And here for the how we can create a coordination contour for the Earth station, we can find all necessary information in the radio regulations, volume 2, appendix 7. It explains for all types of Earth stations, creations of the Earth stations in more detail. In order to facilitate, create the coordination contour, Bureau has prepared a software. It is called GIBC Appendix 7. By using this easily, you can create the coordination contour. And to facilitate your coordination contour, you have the auxiliary contours, etc. For this one, my colleague, later, he will make with you a case study and how to create coordination contour. We will explain later to you. For the notification, upon completion of the coordination, and the assignments will be recorded in the MIF, and it should be in the regulatory time period. Which assignments will be recorded in the MIF? Assignments that are in conformity with the table of frequency allocation and other provisions listed in rules of procedures, means is 1131 examination, and complete coordination procedures, or sometimes administrations, they cannot complete the coordination and they request from ITU to do the CTI calculation. But upon the CTI calculation, the assignments that given favorable findings will be recorded in the MIF. However, there are some exceptions, that is some frequency assignments still can be recorded. For the international recognition, administrations may request 4.4 or 8.4 applications. And also the frequency assignments that is C2I calculation has been done, but it has been found unfavorable finding can be recorded under 1141. And with the condition that is in case of the harmful interference to eliminate it immediately. Notification information has the part 1S, part 2S, part 3S, and part 1S is only the information that received from the administration. There is no examination on it. Part 2S, upon examination of technical and regulatory examination, favorable findings will be published in part 2S, and unfavorable findings will be published in part 3S. During from the coordination advanced publication procedures up to the notification recording in the MIF procedures, we do have some other obligations or some other procedures, let's say, due diligence information, suspension, and maintenance of MIF. Due diligence information to address the problem of orbit and spectrum reservation without actual use. And this resolution 49 has been entered into force in order to avoid this problem. This is for FSS, MSS, and BSS. And for this resolution 49 procedures, you are giving the information concerning to the launcher, identity, etc. This information needs to be submitted before the end of the 7 years regulatory period. If you don't provide this information, frequency assignments will be cancelled. It is very important. Similarly, due diligence information also needs to be provided under the resolution 552 for the 21.4 and 22 GHz broadcasting satellite service usage in region 1 and 3. needs to be due diligence information also needs to be sent. It's within the 30 days after the commencement of the use. And there is a suspension option. Sometimes administrations, they're not using their frequency assignments transponders and they would like to suspend. And for this, once you suspend the assignments, 3 years you can suspend. And upon the BR should be informed of suspension of the use not later than 6 months. If it's more than 6 months, the period exceeding the 6 months will be reduced from the 3-year suspension. And bringing into use also, there are the procedures needs to be informed to ITU. And ITU has the circular telegram also reminding administrations that is the deadlines is exceeding, bringing into use the diligence information, and if the notification information has not been received, and these assignments should be will be cancelled if they are not provided the information within the regulatory deadline. ITU is also informing individually the administrations concerning to these options. And there is Article 13, maintenance of MIF. BR is responsible from the maintenance of the MIF. It's time to time, BR is consulting to the administrations that is some frequency assignments is not being used continuously, and these are the information. It's publicly available information, and upon this, Bureau is questioning the administrations. And those assignments, if they were not used for some time and being cancelled, but the cancellation will be with the decision of the Radio Regulation Board. Summary of the coordination approach is inform, publish the characteristics, and fulfill the requirements in the radio regulations, and negotiate, complete the coordination with the concerned administrations, and the assignments will be recorded in the MIF. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mehtap, for that very comprehensive overview of all the procedures associated with coordination and so on. We have had quite a few questions come up, but they've been dealt with by written answer in the Q&A. So I'll ask people who might have raised questions and any other persons who have access to check the Q&A box for the answers that have been posted there. We don't have any, well, I was saying we don't have any unanswered questions. When I started talking, there were none. But given that it is almost 10 o'clock, I think what I would prefer that we go on to your next colleague's presentation, okay, and then we try and deal with the questions thereafter. So please go ahead and introduce them. Yeah, Mehtap, you can introduce who is going to present.
Yeah, I will introduce. That is my colleague, Pam Viet Ton will explain you about plan band BSS plan. Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Yes, we're seeing it, but we're not hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear
Hello?
you.
Okay. So thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. So in this 40 minutes, I will present to you the broadcasting satellite service plan in Region 2. Because this seminar is dedicated to administration in Region 2, I noticed that there are some participants from Region 1 or Region 3. But as you know that the in ITU, we have 3 regions, Regions 1 and 3 and Region 2. So we have the BSS plan for Region 2 and another BSS plan for Region 1 and 3. They are following different procedure. And if you are an administration in Region 2, you cannot apply the procedure in Region 1 and 3 to have more resources. That's why in order to maximize the time available, I will mainly focus on the Region 2 procedure. Having said that, this is what I will cover in this presentation. So the Region 2 BSS started in 1983. It was the regional conference who prepared the Region 2 BSS plan, the associated provisions, and the necessary resolutions. And later on, it was submitted this thing to the WIRC 85 for incorporation into the radio regulations. So compared to the Regions 1 and 3 plan, the Region 2 plan is quite stable. The stable in terms of the characteristics, as you know, at later on, is still based on the analog modulation. And the subsequent WRC is mainly improved the regulatory procedure, like to have the bring into use similar to the non-plan or the Regions 1 and 3. And the last WRC 19 is also introduced the concept of agreement obtained for a specified period, as well as improve the examination procedure in order for the Bureau to do it more accurate and try to reduce the number of affected administration by using the more accurate characteristics. So concerning the frequency bands, here you see that for the BSS, the band 12.2 to 12.7 gigahertz, and for the feeder link is 17.3 to 17.8 gigahertz are allocated to Region 2 BSS. And in total, we have 500 megahertz, and this 500 megahertz is divided into 32 channels, and it has 24 megahertz. So in Region 2, we have 32 with 24 megahertz channel, and it is 24 standard bandwidth in Region 2. And if you know, in Region 1 and 3, it is we have the 40 channels in Region 1 and 24 channel in Region 2, in Region 3 with 27 megahertz bandwidth, and the frequency are different. That's why for the BSS, different from the FSS, which will be presented after this session, is regional plan. It's not worldwide plan. And here is the main procedure in Region 2. So the IP, the appendix is 3038. It is self-contained, and it contains several procedures. But here are the main procedure in Region 2. So we have the procedure in Article 4 and another procedure in Article 5. So in Article 4, it contains one procedure for Regions 1 and 3 and another procedure for Region 2. And in this presentation, I will focus on the Article 4 procedure applicable to Region 2. And by applying Article 4 procedure, you can have more, or you can add more resources into the plan. I will present this in detail later on. And once you have something in the plan, and if you want to to bring into use, you have to apply the Article 5 procedure. And different from the Article 4, in Article 5, we have only one procedure applicable to regions 1 and 3 and 2. So here let us assume that as I said before, we have 500 megahertz allocated to the BSS in region 2, and let's assume that the total amount of the capacity of the region 2 is represented by this circle. So you will see that here the blue one is represent the amount of the capacity that was taken by WARC 85 in order to create an original plan for region 2. And this is what we call as explained by Metab on her previous presentation is planning approach. And the planning approach is to ensure equitable access to DSO orbit among ITU member states. So the red one, you see that is the capacity beyond the original plan. So in this, if so you can have more capacity, but then you have to apply Article 4 procedure. The Article 4 procedure is the seeking agreement procedure, but essentially it is based on the first come, first served. What is first come, first served? It means that first you have to request. If you do not request, you will not have additional resources. If just what you have is only in the original plan. And if you request, yes, then you have to coordinate with what is, as you know, is come before you. So that is a principle of the first come, first served. So let's talk about the original plan in region 2. So the original plan, it contains the national assignments for each region 2 administration, and it is recorded, it is contained in the radio regulations. So you can find it in Article 10 of Appendix 30 for the BSS, and the Article 9 of the Appendix 30A for the associated feeder link. And if you go to Article 10 of the Appendix 30, you will see this kind of the tabular format. So it contains the entry in the plan. So the first column, it indicates the beam name. Normally the beam name, it will compose of 8 characters. The first 3 is indicate the country code or the administration code. And then the last 5 just indicate the just to distinguish among the entry for us for an administration or a group of administration. And then the next column, it indicates the orbital position. So when you see that it's minus, it means that the orbital position in the west. And if you see that it's positive, it is in the east. And then the channel, because then, as I said before, that 500 megahertz is divided into 32 standard channels. And then the column 4, 5, 6 indicate the parameter of the elliptical beams. And why elliptical beams, then I will explain to you later on. And then we have the column 7 indicate the polarization is 1 or 2 is indicate that the polarization, because for development of the original plan is based on the circular polarization. And then for circular polarization, we have circular left and circular right. The column 8 is the EIRP, the maximum EIRP, and the 9 indicate the group or any remarks associated to an entry in the plan. So as you know that in order to develop a space plan, space service plan, we have to, the conference had to adopt a set of standard characteristics, because without a standard characteristic, it is not possible to create a plan. So the standard characteristics are for an administration, the coverage surface area will be limited to the national territories. And in order to define the coverage for the national territory, it will be based on an elliptical beams. And that's why in the previous, in the Article 10, you will see that parameters associated to an elliptical beam. And for the emission here, you see that it's 24 M. 24 M, it indicates that it's 24 megahertz per channel. And the designation type of modulation is still is indicated as F8F. It is analog modulation. It is because the Region 2 plan was created back to 1983. At that time, we still have based on the analog modulation. And as I said before, that the Region 2 plan is quite stable. It means that it's still based on the analog modulation. Whereas for the Region 1 and 3, at WRC 2000, they did a replanning by adopting the digital modulation. And at WRC 15, the WRC 15 adopted a resolution requesting all the existing assignments be converted to the digital. So as soon as from the WRC 19, for the Region 1 and 3, everything is digital. And in terms of the polarization, is circular polarization. And the power, the input power, the EIRP, etc., is designed in a way that to make sure that C/N should be at least 14 dB for 99% of the worst month. And for the sharing among the Region 2 plan, we are based on the OEPM, which is overall equivalent protection margin. Here you see that in the feeder link, we have a standard 5 meter, and in the receiving, we have standard 1 meter. For more information, you can find in Annex 5 of Appendix 30 for the BSS, and Annex 3 of the Appendix 30A for the associated feeder link. So with regard to the elliptical beam, the elliptical beams is defined by an antenna pattern. The antenna pattern is required in order to calculate the satellite antenna gain everywhere within the visible part of the Earth. And then it also needs to have the bore side, where we have the bore side is the longitude and latitude of the maximum antenna gain. And then we have the major and minor axis and the orientation and beamlet. So when you submit an elliptical beams, the maximum antenna gain can be derived using from this equation based on the major axis and minor axis. And as in the GIMS application, you will see that the elliptical beam is indicated as a minor 3 dB antenna relative gain contour and a bore side. So with that is for the original plan, and what I would like you to do after this workshop is to find out how many entries ESA administration has in the original Region 2 plan and their associated characteristics. The associated characteristic is not only the ones you find it in the radio regulations, but I would like you to also to find out nowadays the reference situation associated to each of the entries you have in the plan, and to see that you are still the reference situation is defined it defines the interference environment, is to see that if your plan is still okay for you to bring into use in the future, or maybe it's because you already accept a lot of interference and you are not able to bring it into you in the future. So this is kind of the homework I would like you to do. And if you have any question, any clarifications, just feel free to send me an email. So now let's move on, and let's assume that what if you want to have more done in the original Region 2 plan. So in this case, you have to apply Article 4 procedure. And when I say the Article 4 or Article 5, I refer to the Article 4 or Article 5 of the appendixes 30 and 38 because we have, as you know, we have Article 4 and Article 5 of the radio regulations. The Article 5 of the radio regulations, it refers to the table of frequency allocation. Yeah. So before moving to the Article 4 procedure, here I would like to give you some statistics based on our master database published in the BI Fix 29-24. So for the original plan, we have in total 39 administrations in region 2, and the number of entries is 143. Which means that normally for each of you should have more than 1 entries in the plan. This is compared to the region 1 and 3 plan, because here you see that you have only 39 administration and you have 500 megahertz. Let's take an example in Africa. In region 1, we have only 800 megahertz, and the number of administration in Africa is 55 or 54, and we have also many administration in Europe. So that's why in the region 1 and 3, most of administration, they have only 1 entry in the plan, whereas in the region 2, you may have more than 1 entries in the plan. In terms of the Article 4 application, up to now, you see that there's only limited application in region 2, only 9 administration. And there are 49 entries resulting from the successful application of Article 4. And the 49 is coincident, is the same, but it's still, you know, under coordination. And here you see that well, you see that for the France, the UK, you see that they are known as administration in region 1. But why they can apply the Article 4 procedure in region 2 to ask for more resources? It is because France and UK or Netherlands, they have the overseas territories in region 2, and as such they are also considered as an administration in region 2, and because they are administration in region 2, they are entitled to apply region 2 procedure. And let's take an example. For example, Spain. Spain is an administration in region 1, but Spain, they don't have any overseas territory in region 2. That's why Spain, they cannot apply the region 2 procedure to ask the more resources in region 2. So here is a schema of the Article 4 procedure. So we will go, you know, in detail one by one. But for the Article 4 procedure, what I would like you to remember is that it is you, let's say in this case that you want to have more resources. So it is you who have to initiate the Article 4 procedure. If you do not request additional resources, you will not have it. But that's why you have to initiate Article 4 procedure. And then there will be interaction between the BR and its own administration, considered as notifying administration. The BR and the affected administrations, and both the notifying and affected administration interaction. And because the Article 4 procedure is mean that you subject to a time limitation. And as a method indicated that for the non-plan, you have 7 years in order to complete the procedure. But for the plan, you have 1 more year, which is 8-year procedure in order to complete all these steps. So let's go to step by step the Article 4 procedure. The first step, as I said, that the notifying administration to submit a notice to the Bureau. So in order to submit a notice to the Bureau, you have to prepare it. So when you prepare it, let's define the main characteristics first. The orbiter position. Which orbiter position you would like to have? Do you want to have you know, another orbiter position which is different from the one that given to you in the original plan, or you want to use the same orbital position as in the original plan, and you just want to expand the coverage or add more more channel, or increase the EIRP, or reduce the size of a station. So you have to determine first the orbital position and the channels. And normally what I would like to recommend to you is that at the coordination stage, let's submit the maximum number of channel, which is 32. The polarization is also, I would like to advise you to submit not only circular polarization, but also linear polarization, because these things of polarization may help you during the frequency coordination. The coverage and service area, if at the time of the submission you cannot sure about the final coverage and service area, let's go to the region 2. Remember that because you are in region 2, the service area, the maximum service area can only be the region 2. You cannot include 3 in the service area of a satellite network in region 2. The station sizes for the feeder link, you may wish to use like 5 meter, like as in the standard. But for the receiving part, instead of 1 meter, you may wish to use 0.6 meter, which is nowadays a standard receiving station. Once you have this kind of the main characteristics, so the information to be submitted to the bureau is listed in Annex 4. And the format that you have to submit is you have to submit in 2 different databases. The first one is in the SNS database, and the second one is GIMS data, which contain antenna gain contour. So here you should use SpaceCap and GIMS to capture this information. We would like to recommend you to use the ITU BRSoft to capture this notice. And after that, you can use a SpaceOne to validate the filing. Just one thing I would like to say to you that during this the application of the procedure, before or during or after the application of the procedure, at any stage, if you need an assistant from the bureau, please do not hesitate to contact us, because we are here to help you, to assist you. And once you complete the notice, then you should submit to the bureau as soon as possible. Because this article 4 procedure is about first come first served. You submit first, you get you have the seat first. And so in order to submit to the notice to the bureau, here we change this. You know that you have to make sure that you already have an e-submission account. So here I would like to advise for those of you who have not yet have an e-submission account, please contact the BR to open it, because once you have it, you can use it whenever you need it. And then you have to send the notice through the e-submission system. Nowadays, if you submit, if you do not submit the notice through the e-submission system, the bureau, the notice is not receivable. In terms of the characteristics for the Article 4 application, here as for application of Article 4 procedure, you can have different characteristics from those used for the establishing the plans. For example, instead of elliptical beam, you can use a shape beam. Instead of the coverage limited to the national territory, you can expand it to the region 2 coverage. You can use linear polarization or different sizes of the earth station. Nevertheless, when you see that a SHA is indicated in the radio regulation, especially in the Annex 5 and Annex 3, though you have to observe it. For example, the station keeping or the minimum feeder link stations in region 2. So again, during the preparation of filing, if you have any doubt or you need any clarification, please feel free to contact the bureau for for further assistance. And here is just to indicate you an example of the shaped beam. The shaped beam here, you see that for the elliptical beam, you see that we have only -3 dB antenna gain contour and a bore side. And the gain within the visible part of the Earth is derived is from this equation of the associated to the antenna pattern. But for the shaped beam, because we do not have an equation to calculate the gain, we have to submit in accordance with the Annex 4, Appendix 4, we have to submit a set of the relative antenna gain contours, which are -2, -4, -6, -10, and -20 dB. And if the beam is steerable beam, you have to submit also the zero isolate gain. And the gain between the two contours will be interpolated. So once you submit the notice to the bureau, then it is our turn. The bureau will examine and publish the notice in a special section. So, but before the examination of the notice, we have to make sure that the notice is complete and ready for examination. In this case, the bureau, what the bureau does is we are doing the completeness check, and if there's any missing information or we need any clarification, so we can contact our administration, which is notifying administration, and we allow you 30 days to reply. So what it is also important because it is first come first serve procedure. You should try, once you submit the notice, you should try to keep the date of receipt. You should not lose it. So try to reply within the 30 days. Otherwise, we will consider that the notice is incomplete, and we will keep it in the bureau for archiving for 1 year to wait for your reply. And then the date of receipt will be established once we receive your reply. But after 1 year, if there's nothing happen, then we will return the notice to your administration. And then when the notice is complete, then the bureau will do examination. And then in this doing examination is mainly to identify affected administration and networks using criteria contained in Annex 1 to Appendixes 30 and 38. And then we will publish the notice in a Part A special sections, which contains the information submitted by the notifying administration, together with a list of the affected administrations as well as network, in order to help you to complete, to comply with the procedure. Let's talk about a bit more about the Annex 1, the criteria to identify affected administration, because you know the reason to the BSS plan is regional plan, which means that it has to share not only among the assignment in the region 2, but it has also to share with the other services in other regions. In the same services or in the other services in other regions. So to identify the potentially affected administration in region 2 BSS, we have the OEPM criteria, and the BI application for this purpose is MSpace. And with respect to the affected administrations in region 1 and 3, also for the BSS plan or list, on the non-plan, so we apply the PFD criteria in downlink and the delta T over T in the feeder link. The BR application for this examination is GIBC PFD space services and GIBC Appendix 8. Appendix 8 is for the delta T over T, and the GIBC PFD is for the PFD downlink. And to identify the affected administrations with terrestrial services, again we use the PFD, the same the same name, the PFD, but you know we have different criteria for protection of the space services, and the PFD with different value for protection of threshold services. And the BI application is GIBC PFD terrestrial services. Here it is just to show you how the OEPM is calculated. The OEPM is calculated taking into account the interference contribution from feeder link as well as in the downlink. And you see here that it is a margin. It is not the absolute value. It is margin is where we calculate the C over I aggregate, and we subtract the protection ratio. And here you see that there are 5 different interference times. Why 5? It's because reason 2 is based on the analog modulation. And in the region 2 is in order to be protected. Region 2, the regional conference at in 1983 decided to take into account the interference contribution up to the upper and lower second adjacent channel, which you may see that there's no frequency overlap. However, if it is converted into the digital modulation, then we will see only one type of interference, which is co-channel interference. Then, once the Bureau published the Part A special section, then the affected administration to comment and the notifying administration to coordinate. For the affected administration, then the affected administration will have 4 months from the date of the publication of the relevant BI FIC. So the procedure for comment I will explain in details. I think Monday next week. But here a little bit complex. For example, if it depends on the incoming network. If the incoming network is in region 2, so we have Spacecom to comment. And if you do not comment within the 4 months commenting periods, it means that you accept the interference from the incoming network. And when an incoming network is in regions 1 and 3, so there's no Spacecom available. You have to send a telefax to the Bureau. And then here is different. No comment within the 4 months. It means that you do not accept. But after the 4 months, the notifying administration, they can request the Bureau to contact the affected administration to get the idea yes or no, accept it or not accept it. And if the affected administration continue to keep silent, so say silent, it means that you accept it. Then after the 4 months, then the notifying administration can, the Bureau will publish a Part D special section which define the administration with which coordination is required. And then the notifying administration can carry out the frequency coordination. The frequency coordination, the purpose of frequency coordination is to obtain the agreement from the affected administration. Some affected administration, depending on the level of the interference it received, may just simply accept without requesting any change to the characteristics, or some may depending on the level also may be big and request to reduce the radiation over its territory. The notifying administration, in case they cannot get an agreement, they may also modify the Part A characteristic in order to avoid any coordination. Then after the coordination, then the notifying administration have to submit again, but at this time is final characteristic to the Bureau. So here you see that in application of Article 4 procedure, administration, the notifying administration has to submit twice. The first is initial characteristics for coordination, and after finishing coordination, when they know the final characteristics, they have to submit again to the bureau. Though in this, then you prepare the final characteristics. But what I would like to advise you when you prepare the final characteristics is that you should not prepare it from scratch. Instead, you take what you have in the part A and you compare with the coordination agreement or the modification during the coordination process. Then you introduce the changes in the part A, and then in order to prepare the final characteristics. Then you just simply follow the procedure to submit is through the e-submission system. Yeah, it is. Remember that you have to submit is through e-submission system. Then,
Tong, if I could interrupt
yeah,
you for a second, we are into the break time now, so I'll just ask if you could, try to wind up as quickly as you can.
Okay, so I will try to speed up. Okay, sorry for taking a lot of time. So in this, then once the bureau receive the part B, the bureau will examine just to make sure that if there's no missing agreement, and if everything is okay, the bureau will enter the final characteristic into the plan through the publication of the part B special section. So here is during the application, in application of Article 4 procedure, the bureau will produce this kind of the product. We call it a special section, the part A, part D, part B, and part C, as well as the bureau also provide the databases, as well as the technical examination. So that is all about the Article 4 procedure. And now, let's say that you have something in the plan and you want to bring into use. So which procedure you have to follow? In this case, you have to follow Article 5 procedure of the appendixes 30 and 38. The important for the Article 5 procedure is that you cannot notify to the bureau earlier than 3 years before the plan date of bring into use. In this case, the notification will be returned to your administration. And if there's no change to the plan characteristics, you just simply send a letter to the bureau indicating the plan assignment and the date of bring into use. And if there are some changes, then you have to submit the Appendix 4 data as well as GIM data through e-submission. And after that, you can, if you then inform the bureau about the bring into use. So once on receipt of the notification, the bureau will check, carry out just more or less the same as we do with the part A, part B, contact our administration if some information is missing or any clarification is needed. But then for the examination, the bureau will, depending on the results of examination, the first is that if the bureau reach favorable finding, the bureau will publish it in the part 1S and part 2S. That means that the assignment have been recorded in the master register. And if we reach an unfavorable finding, then the notification will be returned to administration through publication of part 1S and part 3S. If you notify before the bring into use, so in case at the end of the regulatory period, the 8th year, you do not bring into use, then the notification as well as assignment in the plan resulting from Article 4 procedure will be cancelled. But if you brought into use within the 8th year, then the bureau will remove the provisional entry, provisional remark, and update the BIU information. Here, I would like to say that once in order to enjoy the same status as original plan, the plan resulting from application of Article 4 procedure has to be brought into use within 8 years. Otherwise, it will be deleted. And for this protection of your plan this I will cover in detail in on Monday next week. The one would like to say that if your administration is identified as a factors, then you shall send comment to the bureau, to the notifying administration and to the bureau within the 4 months from the date of the relevant BI-FIC publication. And in region 2, if no comment within the 4 months with space scope, it means that the affected administration accepts an increase of harmful interference, and thus the protection level from subsequent network is reduced, and in the future you may not be able to bring into use your plan assignment without harmful interference. So there's other main regulatory aspects like for the TT&C as contained in Article 2A. The coordination with terrestrial services is contained in Article 6, and with the non-plan FSS is in Article 7. So here is just a list of the plan and list data, and some useful website for more information. So I would like to ask you to stay just for a few minutes so that I can cover the changes made by WRC 19 to the Region 2 plan. So it's just to indicate, to clearly indicate that the Article 2A networks, which is for the space operation function, is not subject to Resolution 49. And a provision to clearly indicate that if notification is the same as a Part B, then the notifying administration, when submitting the Part B and notification, they just simply submit the Part B and indicate requesting the bureau to use it for the notification. And for notification, what the notifying administration have to do is to provide additional information concerning the bringing to use. In order to reduce the coordination, the number of affected administration, WRC 19 also introduced the second examination in a way that the bureau will use the final characteristics of an affected network to see that if with the final characteristic that an affected network is still affected or not. And then the provision for agreement to be obtained for specified periods, and then requesting the bureau to send a reminder at least 90 days before the expiry of that specified period for an agreement. And then in terms of the coordination procedure, WRC 19 requests the notifying administration to really carry out the frequency coordination with the affected administration. It's not just apply for the provisional entry and bring into use. The last is about the modification to the Annex 7 to Appendix 30. WRC 19 decided to remove limitations on orbital position further east than 54 degree west in 12.5 to 12.7 gigahertz, and further east than 44 degree west in 12.2, 12.5 gigahertz for the BSS serving in region 2. So it means that there's more resources allocated to the region 2. And by removing this limitation, WRC 19 also adopt the resolution 768, introduce the new way of examination in order not to impose too much undue constraint on the future application of the FSS. And there are also some correction of the typographical errors. And I think with this, I finish my presentation, and sorry for taking to so much time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Tong. It is a lot to go through. The one thing I would ask, did you have your email contact on the presentation slide?
Yes, I have on my first,
yes.
yeah, on my first here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, because as people go through and so on, there would be things that come up. Is it's really a lot to take in. So yeah. I think we can you can expect probably some correspondence from attendees here. There are 2 questions open, but I will ask that you look at them and see if it's possible to type the answer in, because
Okay, I will do, yeah.
Yeah, we've been going for what, more than an hour and a half now. So I think we're due for, let's take a 10-minute break and then come back. Now, for the two presenters in the last session, in the second session, I asked if maybe you could try to keep your presentations to no more than 35 minutes so that we'll be able to get them in and maybe get any clarifying questions addressed as well. So let us break now and resume in 10 minutes, which would be at 5 minutes before 11 our time. We'll break now and we'll be back shortly. Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope everyone is able to see what's happening here. I certainly stopped my sharing. We are getting ready for our second part of our session today. Because we had this bit of unscheduled explanation at the front of our session this morning, we are running a little bit behind time. So let me give a little heads up that it's quite possible that we may run a little long today, maybe like a 10 minutes or 15 minutes over the scheduled time. So instead of 12:15, we may go closer to 12:30. So let me not delay the presentations any further. I will ask, we'll be having presentations now, one from Mr. Alexander Kliusharev and the other from Timur Kadyrov from the Space Services area. I don't know if Ms. Mitap Dufour wants to say anything to introduce them, but I'll hand over now to the presenters from the Space Services section. It looks like Alexander is all ready, so I'll hand over to Alexander Kliusharev from the Space Services. Please go ahead, Alexander.
Yes, thanks a lot. And ladies and gentlemen,
we're not hearing you. Oops, nope. You're okay. Yes, we are hearing you. I wasn't hearing you because I didn't have my headphones on.
Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good day and good evening for everybody. Let me do the presentation in relation to the FSS plan. As you know, do you see my screen? Everything okay? Just to check.
Yes.
Okay. As you know, in compare with the terrestrial community, we have only two plans. We have one plan for BSS, what was just presented by my colleague Tong, and now we have another one in relation to the FSS. All of this issue based on the understanding that the radio frequencies and satellite orbits are the limited natural resource, and in one hand, this resource must be used rationally, efficiently, and economically. But at the same time, all countries shall have the equitable access to this limited resource. That's why one of the mechanisms of preventing the interference, as well as giving the equivalent access of everybody to this limited resource, is the plan. And FSS plan contains in the appendix 30B to the radio regulation. In compare with the coordination approach, the planning approach has some pro and contra. At one hand, it's everybody has equitable access, and depend on your current situation and depend on your current plan, this particular resource may be realized currently or in the future. But at the same time, to have such a possibility to do something in the future and be sure that it can be done, some portion of the spectrum and orbits should be frozen for a time being, for at least for the life period of the plan. Usually plan established for the 20 years, but anyway, it shall be revised or if everybody agrees to cancel by the relevant World Conference. The FSS plan has been created during the two specific World Administrative Radio Conference. During the conference 1985, the general principle and the method, as well as the technical parameters, what shall be used for the planning procedure, was agreed by the administration. And only 3 years later, during the World Administrative Radio Conference 1988, the relevant FSS plan was established. During the World Conference 2007, the plan as it is was kept unchanged, but the regulatory procedure, regulatory provision of the Appendix 30B was not the totally, but a lot of modification has been done and revised. And during the last conference, despite of the fact that within the agenda item of this conference, it was no stay alone agenda item relevant to the Appendix 30B plan, a lot of modification has been done under umbrella of agenda, the general agenda item 7 relevant to the provision of coordination, advanced publication and notification of the satellite system. A little bit later in the end of my presentation, I will more in detail consider the issue of what happened during the last conference. In compare with the BSS plan, plan for FSS, it's a worldwide plans. That's why there is no difference in between region 1, 2, and 3. And if you wish, you may use as additional system in even the opposite side of the Earth and compare with your territory, it will be in line with this global plan. And this plan cover two big portion of the band in 4 and 6 band by the 300 megahertz, and in the 10, 11, and 30 gigahertz band by 500 megahertz each. In compare again with the BSS plan, I will a lot of time to make a comparison in between one plan and another one, because it's very similar, but there are some very important features and differences. In compare with the BSS plan, the plan of FSS is a plan of allotment. That's why there is no possibility to directly use your allotment and brought it into the use. Before this, you need to do the conversion, your allotment into assignments. Again, as this is a plan, some or maybe majority plan allotments currently not in operation. That's why it's compared with the non-plan bands. You have to notify your assignments before brought into use. And the characteristic of these assignments will be entered into the master registry. But the further protection of these assignments, despite the fact that something already exists in the master registry, will be granted based on the plan or list characteristics. It's also very important to know. And again, due to this as a plan, the only national coverage was discussed during the planning procedure. I mean, during the original planning procedure, and standard parameters have been used during the planning procedure. Today, on the screen, you may see the main standard parameter from the plan. You may say that 5.5 meter antenna in 4 GHz band, it's not good. But you need to remember that this plan was established more than 30 years ago. And in that period of time, it was good enough. Furthermore, during the conversion, your national allotment into assignment, you may modify it, you may do this conversion beyond the initial characteristic of your allotment, and the smallest antenna may be submitted. Of course, it will create additional coordination burden for you, but anyway, there is such a possibility to use the small antenna and compare with the standard parameter. During the planning procedure, the following protection carrier to noise ratio was guaranteed based on some conditions. All of this information can be found in Annex 1 to Appendix 30B in the second volume of the radio regulation. In the Appendix 30B, there are 11 articles and 4 annexes. Yes. The plan itself contains in the Article 10, and each administration, a little bit later on the next slide I show you, has an orbital position, 2 frequency slots by 300 and 500 megahertz in up and down link, and 6 and 4 gigahertz band, and 10, 11 and 30 gigahertz band, and service area with the national coverage covered by elliptical or shaped beam. Usually we use the elliptical beam as it was presented during the previous presentation, but shaped beam, it's a combination of some elliptical beam in some cases where for administration with some specific geographical situation. The main procedure for conversion or for introduction of additional system contains in the Article 6 of Appendix 30B. Procedure for notification and recording in the master registry in the Article 8. The hard limit, which should be done within the plan itself, contained in the Annex 3, and Annex 4 contains the criteria for determination where an allotment or assignment is considered to be affected. As I promised, on the screen you may see the extract from the Article 10. In the alphabetical order, you may find the name of your administration. The next, the column number 2 is your orbital slots. Column number 3 and 4 is the both sides of your beam. 5, 6, and 7 is the parameter of your ellipse, and 8 and 9 is the ARP value, the maximum ARP value which can be used within by your allotment. And number 10 is a different commenting, which clarification can be found in the very first page of the Article 10, Appendix 30B. First of all, during the planning procedure itself, I mean, when the plan was created, all plan allotment was compatible in between other. During the conversion procedure or during the additional user, this particular newcomer shall be compatible with the plan and with the list assignments. That's why within the plan, there is a possibility to find the compatible itself. But of course, your administration shall take care about your allotment to give in the proper time relevant commenting in respect to the newcomer. Otherwise, you simply lost your position in this. Not it was be struck out from the plan. No, it will be exist, but you cannot realize it due to the reason of incompatibility with the newcomer. And also, due to the frequency band using by the plan, by terrestrial service, the compatibility in between plan and terrestrial service reach to fulfilled the limits established in the Article 21 and 22 of the radio regulation. That's why protection of the terrestrial service guaranteed by this hard limit. On the screen, you see simply the comparison of the procedure in between plan and non-plan. As I said before, 3 different sources. There are 3 different sources for the plan publication. First of all, it's when you wish to convert your allotment into assignments and later on brought into use. Also, there is the possibility to submit the additional system beyond your national allotment, or even in addition to your additional for your national allotment. Furthermore, there is no any provision in the plan that at the beginning you shall implement your national allotment, and only after that you should submit the additional system. No, you may send directly your additional request and keep as your national allotment as a store in the store. Nobody prevented. And also there is a provision in the Article 7 which gives the possibility the new member states to receive the national allotment in the case if it was not taken into account during the original planning procedure. Here there is how to say the roadmap of the procedure described in the Article 6. If you wish to convert your national allotment or submit the additional system, you should submit to the BR relevant Appendix 4 and DREAMS data not earlier than 8 years before the plan date brought into use this particular requirements. It should be done through the e-submission. When we receive it, we make available this information to all administration. We published it information as received, but please take note that no any regulatory status for this publication, just to share this information to everybody. After that, independent of the backlog, we do the completeness procedure to verify the submitted data with exchange with the notifying administration. And as you already know, when we send the completeness telefax, notifying administration shall reply within the 30 days. Otherwise, the new date received of this submission will be established. And when the completeness procedure finished, the initial technical characteristics of the subject networks are fixed. And after that, we start to do regulatory and technical examination. The result of this examination published in the special section Appendix 30B/A6A, and the technical result itself can be found in the relevant folder on the BIFIC. On the screen, you see the example of such a publication. We also, in between us, call it as Part A. Because this is the initial characteristics. Furthermore, this publication contains a list of affected administration and satellite networks, result of our examination under 6.5 and 6.6, and also it contains a different BR finding and notice. Now I wish to pay attention of everybody, not who is wish to submit such filings. Due to everybody has the national allotment, that's why you, as I said before, you should protect this allotment. You should protect this allotment and makes relevant comments. That's why it's very important to have to check the table which contains the result 6.5, as you see in the upper part on the screen. And here it means that your national allotment, assignment in the list, or assignments of previously submitted networks is identified as affected. The second table contains the result of 6.6 examination. It means that the operator of this new submission wish to include the territory of your administration into the service area of this network. What's the difference? The difference is the 6.5 identification means that you really affected. Here, there is a specific criteria contained in the Annex 4 to the Appendix 30B. And also, you should do your comments preferably within the 4 months, but this is not the hard limit. I mean, this is not the hard time limit. If you keep it silent, automatically you will be considered as disagree with these new assignments. But at the same time, notifying administration has the possibility to seek assistance from the BR to clarify the situation. And when such a request, such assistance procedure will be activated, you will have only 30 days. And if you again keep it silent, it automatically be considered that you agree with these new assignments, new entries. At the same time, in relation to the identification under 6.6, it does not mean that any of your service affected. It only means that territory of your administration wish to be included to the service area. That's why there is no any time limits for reply. At the same time, your the unified administration shall seek explicit agreement from your side to include your territory in the service area. And furthermore, in any time later, you may disregard this agreement following the 6.16 provision. Here, it's more or less relevant to the notifying administration. You need to have, if I may say, if everything okay, on below each assignments, there is you need to check the finding. If there is A, means everything okay. If there is no or empty, please go to the BR notes with seeking clarification what's the reason of this unfavorable finding, and these particular assignments published for information only, and will not be considered for further examination. As I said before, due to there is no hard time limit for such kind of publication, for commenting during 4 months, the SpaceCom is not applicable for commenting of the submission under Appendix 30B. You may do it by fax, by mail, or through the e-communication facilities. But again, please be informed that specific procedure of assistance may be activated by the notifying administration in the case of your silent, and after that you will have only 30 days to react. When you complete the coordination, you should submit your final characteristics to the BR, again through the e-submission system. Friendly speaking, you may do the opposite. I mean, you may submit firstly your notification request, which contain a little bit of more data in compare with with Article 6, and BR will recreate back the your submission to be entered into the list. But unfortunately, maybe it's a contradict with the provision of the Appendix 3030A, and unfortunately, a lot of the administration submit firstly append Article 6 submission and ask us to create the Article 8 notification submission, but it's simply impossible because, again, Article 8 submission contains a little bit more information. And again, exactly the same principle. We do the completeness, fix the final characteristics, and after that we do regulatory examination and technical examination. And if everything okay, we do the publication of a special section Appendix 30B A6B, which contains the final characteristics. And if examined assignments has unfavorable finding in respect to the other assignments which in the list or which still under the passing the procedure of Article 6, you may seek the provisionally entry into the list. But it cannot be applicable for the case if allotment identified as potentially affected. And when you successfully enter into the list, you should do the notification and also pass through the standard procedure as for the non-planned ban, confirmation of brought into use, resolution 40 and resolution 49. On the screen, you see the example of the Part B publication. As I said before, it contains the final characteristic of the networks. Also, this contains the date of entering into the list, list of agreement. You may see it on the screen. It published on the very first technical list with this special section. And also, you may find the BR notes. Again, if everything okay, below each assignments you may find AA, but if something wrong, you may find N with the reasons in the BR note what the subject of the unfavorable finding. And again, if only if no allotment of other administration was identified still affected, you may seek as a provisional entry into the list. The procedure of notification is very similar and described in the Article 8 of Appendix 30B. Here there is no the standard publication as a Part 1S is equivalent to the acknowledgement that we receive such information. And when this information received, we do our regulatory and technical examination. And if everything okay, we do the publication in the Part 2S. It means that your assignments successfully recorded in the master registry, provisionally or permanent. But if you find your assignments published in the Part 3S, it means that we return back these assignments to notifying administration with the indication of appropriate action shall be done to restart this procedure again to be entered into the list. As well as for the BSS plan, we have 8 years regulatory period of time for implementation the assignments. Exactly the same with the BSS. And if in the case of the launch filed, you may seek the agreement, the permission to prolongate this period, but not more than 3 years with some circumstances. And as I promised, the result of the last conference in respect to the 30B FSS plan. First of all, here it was agreed that the agreement between administration may be obtained for the specific period of time, because previously we observed that, assume that all agreement permanent. Furthermore, as I said already, if you wish to simultaneously, you may submit a notice for notification under Article 8 and simultaneously ask us to consider this submission as entering into the list, but not vice versa. Also, due to the coordination arc within for determination of the affected administration was reconsidered, automatically was reconsidered the hard limit contained in the Annex 3 to the Appendix 30B. It's very important because some administration, when create the new submission, simply copy paste the previous already published submission with the change of the satellite name and change the orbital position and send it to us, keeping in mind that it's already passed all procedures that it should be in line with the regulation. But due to the coordination act has been revised, the power flag density limits revised also. And now please be careful, that's due to not all the previously submitted and already published notices can pass through this particular new limits. Also, the Annex 4 was revised. And now, as a new criteria for determination whether an allotment or assignment is considered to be affected, was included the PFD mask. It's a new one because previously we use only single and overall aggregate value. And last but not least, the resolution 170 was established by the last conference. This particular resolution contains specific procedure for conversion of allotment into assignments with the modification outside of the initial characteristics the allotment. As I said at the beginning, if you wish to realize your existing allotment with smallest antennas, for example, it will be beyond already the initial envelope. Some coordination burden should be applied in this case, and to facilitate the criteria contains in the Annex 4 to Appendix 30B a little bit modified in the resolution 170, but such a resolution and benefits of such resolution may be taken by any administration only one time, and in the case if such administration does not contain any assignments in the list. That's why here there is the two circumstances how to implement it. That's all. If you have a question in respect to the plan, 30B, FSS plan, you may ask such a question through the Q&A menu here, or after that, after our presentation, our seminar, send me an email without any problem. I am ready to, with pleasure, to answer this question.
Right.
Okay.
There is a quick one we can address, Alexander, from Isaac Ali from Trinidad. Can databases be used to determine the satellite operator for a specific filing by an administration? And also, can databases be used to determine all of the FSS satellite operators that have a footprint over my administration? Just tell us those things.
You in the database contains the notifying administration itself. It's of course you may using the preface to understand which particular satellite operator work within this administration. Such information can be found in the preface, and also in the data published under Article 8. As I said before, Article 8 data contains a little bit more information compared with the notice submitted under Article 6. You may find the proper codes in relation to this particular operator, satellite operator. Using these two sources, you may identify who is who within this particular administration. I guess, but anyway, after that, I do my written, more careful answer on this question, no problem.
Okay, yes, if you get some additional thoughts, you can type anything additional in there. All right, thank you very much. Let me give Timur his opportunity. And
Thanks so much.
Mr. Timur Kadyrov, also from Space Services, and he's going to be talking about non-GSOs satellites. So Timur, if you are ready, please go ahead.
Yes, and hello everyone. Thank you, Nigel, for presenting myself. So I would like to continue with the presentation on the non-GSO. This is a quite wide and popular subject nowadays, and when we refer to non-GSO, we normally refer to any artificial satellite which is orbiting Earth, which is not on geostationary orbit. So we could have a different orbit which could be defined as a low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, or something like highly elliptical orbit. Could be different shapes, but in general, we refer non-GSO as any satellite located on any orbit which is different from geostationary orbit, as basically it's the name suggests. So comparing non-GSO itself and GSO, there are certain advantages and disadvantages, so let's say features which makes non-GSO more useful for certain purposes. First of all, when we talk about communication purposes, exchanging of data, I don't know, phone calls, etc., it is important that certain data would require certain quality or say prioritization, for example. So for internet, there are certain applications which would require you to have least delay in transmission, for example, trading, let's say, of computer games, for example, another example. And in this case, non-GSO could offer you less delay in transmission paths. When we talk about design stage and launching, it's much easier to launch single non-GSO satellite, of course, than a GSO satellite. Also, there are certain limitations which are applicable to geostationary satellite orbit, because although we understand that this is a global, mostly global, but it's still not covering certain part of the Earth. It's suitable, GSO orbit is suitable to cover latitude from -33 to 83, so we are not covering latitudes above 83 degrees or below. And for these purposes, basically non-GSO could be used to provide services at higher latitude or polar regions. And of course, because of its size, it's much cheaper to create a single satellite, but this normally comes in numbers. So I mean, but when you actually creating your own project, you could start with single non-GSO satellite created for I would say academia purposes, or for example for Earth observation. Disadvantages, of course, because depending on the orbit used by non-GSO, this could be suspected to different ionization effects or radiation effects. They have to, for example, low to medium orbits basically have very limited lifetime because of this, so they're more, I would say, susceptible to the hardware failures, etc. And nowadays it's also becoming quite particular subjects that when we are considering using massively non-GSO satellite orbit, there is a certain danger that there could be some collision effects between non-GSO satellites, of course if it's not controlled. And of course there are also requirements to cleaning orbit after, for example, satellite was malfunctioned or it's actually reached its end of life. So there are certain requirements which are also applicable to geostationary satellite orbit. And there are some, I would say, special orbit to put geostationary satellite orbit. For non-GSO, there is no such orbit. And normally, when we are saying that we need to the orbit satellite, it means that we literally need to bring it down to Earth, so it would burn in the atmosphere in order not to create any other problems to the other satellite. And when we come actually why to the question why non-GSOs become so popular now, this is basically many factors. First of all, because geostationary orbit, of course, is not is very limited resource, and certainly there are investments which are looking into the developing communication services using different orbits. But of course, there is a great advancement in technology itself. Nowadays, it's quite possible to, without too much investment, to create a CubeSat for its, I would say, private projects, so which would not require significant investment. Also, when we talk about GSO production and launching, it's kind of normally we are talking about creating one single satellite and launching it to the orbit, but for non-GSO it's quite possible actually to lower down the cost if we require to create a non-GSO constellation of many satellites by introducing mass production. And of course, there are some advancements in technology itself which are relating to the transmission. So satellite terminals becoming cheaper and smaller. Nowadays, applications which are using Ka band and in the near future V band, it's not something which is kind of could be considered very much sophisticated. Technology allows to create such application and without too much expenses. And of course, if for example, you are situated in the region when there is a high rain rates, normally in the past application of Ka was a bit complicated because of the large rain fade margins required for such kind of application, and people used to prefer KU or even C-band application in such regions. But nowadays, because of the use of adaptive coding modulation, this is where you don't have your link would be always alive. Just in case of the rain, you just experience some decrease of transmission speeds, but it's something which is you don't have raining all the time, so you can enjoy very high speed during, I would say, sunny condition or open clear sky condition. And of course, there is some new technologies are arriving, like create optical links or electronic propulsions to moving satellite within its orbit for drifting purposes. But when it comes to the actually implementation, realization, of course, we need to, same as for GSO, when we consider different coordination procedure and different, for example, even polar planning, the same obligation exists for the non-GSO satellites. They have to use national, international regulations, comply with this regulation. Any player who is planning to use this orbit should be responsible for the use of this object he is supposed to launch. And when we come to the coexistence with other existing developed telecommunication service, it is important that we protect them in terms of interference. So we should coexist. We should minimize any potential interference between the existing services and planned one. And itself, coexistence between non-GSO, when we actually talking about operating several non-GSO using different orbits, it's always open subject. It's basically we need to implement complex coordination procedure in order to make sure that they could exist without creating too much interference to each other. Regarding non-GSO regulation, when we talk about ITU and radio regulations, basically it was evolving quite significantly in the 90s and to beginning of this century. After that, there was some kind of quiet period when we basically there was not too much development. There were basically many developments relating to space science missions, but not so much when we talk about telecommunication services. But what the Bureau has actually, and we actually evidencing that there is a new wave, there is a new space which came in somewhere around 2015, which was sparked with many submissions received by the Bureau to create non-GSO constellations aimed to provide services, telecommunication services. And there are certain regulatory instruments which are govern the use of the frequencies and orbit by the non-GSO. First of all, this is coordination. As it was already mentioned by Mehtab, there are different coordination provisions which are allowed to equitably access spectrum on first-come, first-served basis. There are certainly hard limits to protect terrestrial services and also hard limits to protect geostationary satellite orbit. But when we consider geostationary satellite orbit in general and its protection from non-GSOs, there is a provision 22.2 in radio regulation, which is establishing that non-geostationary satellite system shall not cause unacceptable interference to and shall not claim protection from geostationary satellite networks in the fixed satellite service and the broadcasting satellite service. What does it mean? It means that before actually engaging we don't know in advance what the level of interference will be unacceptable to this particular GSO system. So there may be a requirement to establish this level through consultation or coordination in order to make sure that no interference is caused to GSO. When we consider different regimes of regulation of non-GSO and different application, Mehtab briefly mentioned advanced publication information procedure, but this I'm not going to actually also spend too much time on this. I think on Monday you'll have quite a detailed presentation, but basically API is very simple basic procedure. This is when you send to the Bureau, I would say, some advanced information which may not be exact, which may not contain all the, I would say, details. For example, you are not sure with respect to your orbit of your non-GSO satellite system. You may leave some open questions there, or you could just present it as some kind of with some parameters, and then it follows. It is followed by notification. For notification, you may send exact parameters. You may change orbital parameters which you were initially submitting for API. And then you indicate exact frequency assignments which you are planning to use. So advanced publication information is something which is just inform the Bureau, inform the community and other member states that you are actually planning to do something in this frequency band. And API is also followed by some consultation procedure. This is to decrease the risk of any potential interference between your plant use and existing services or existing system operating already in orbit. Coordination, this was also explained by Mehtab. I would like just to hear, maybe to stop a little bit for I would explain a bit in more detail something which was developed quite recently. This was adopted by the last conference 2019 by a request of many administrations, many newcomers who were starting their own satellite project. And first of all, they were starting their satellite project from very small projects like used by universities, academia, or by amateur satellite. And for this particular application, so users, I would say, new regulations, simplified regulations was adopted, which is called API for short duration mission. On this slide, I'm just trying to roughly give you an idea of what kind of regulatory regime could be applicable to particular service. For amateur satellite, it's basically API. Amateur satellite are using frequency band which are not subject to coordination normally. When we talk about science, meteor and Earth observation, for example, in X-band. This is also subject to API. There are certainly cases when data needs to be transmitted, for example, which was gathered using some science instrument which needs to be communicated back to Earth. There are of course some frequency bands which are subject to coordination, but mostly these are not when we talk about consider non-GSO satellites. For academia normally they start their projects by using amateur satellite frequencies. So again, this is normally not subject to coordination, and for this particular application, we believe that API for short duration mission could be a right solution. When we consider navigation system, which are basically dealing with the security and protection of life, this is again this is subject to coordination. And for the normal telecommunication and user communication, data relay, IoT, which we are using quite very extensively, for which we are using very extensively GSO orbit, these are also subject to coordination. Just maybe coming to previous questions, there was a question in Q&A when we actually can decide whether frequency is subject to coordination or not. Reply was that we should really read, I would say, look into the Article 5 of radio regulations. But just to inform you that we are looking into the more I would say, simplified or maybe more kind of user-friendly instruments which you can use. Maybe you would create a new application website when you can just enter some basic characteristics of your non-GSO satellite assignment, and then you can get the answer whether you need to submit API or you need to submit coordination. So coming back to short duration mission, so what we are basically, when we talk about short duration mission, we are talking, of course, category of small satellite with a limited period of mission duration and evolving development cycle. So basically, we don't know exactly when we are going to basically, we may not know exactly when we are going to launch a satellite, but we know that there are certain parameters which constitute our project, and our project is maybe for several months or maybe a couple of years. So it's not going to be kind of a recurring project. So we just trying our academia new satellites, which was just created for fun, for example. Example, this is amateur satellite, academia small satellite. This, as I said, that this is very recent regulation procedure. It's based on API procedure, and it contains some simplification which can be found in resolution 32. The requirements was basically coming both from existing user of the orbit spectrum resource. There was a concern that development of this CubeSat, I would say, or small satellite project, and not always is following radio regulation. So sometimes people were not aware that they need to, for any before launching a satellite, you need to apply procedures of radio regulations. But at the same time, for these people who was building this project, it was not so easy to understand why it is required, and regulation itself was considered a bit complex. This was understood, and conference decided to make some simplification in this procedure and make it and emphasize it. Basically, it's sometimes you can get lost in radio regulation because it doesn't say exactly, look, this is a procedure which you need to apply, for example, for your, if you want to create your radio navigation satellite system for global positioning, for example, or this is procedure which you may use for short duration mission. So one important objective of this identification was to actually to point out that there is a specific procedure which you normally should follow when you're planning to develop your short duration mission, which is not subject to coordination. So itself, it's kind of, it's make it easier for the understanding of the community, what could be the requirement of radio regulation in this case. So conditions are established in the resolution 32. Just briefly mention that when we are talking about short duration mission, this is maximum number of 10 satellites, and notification could to be sent only after the launch of satellite or first satellite. So this is comes to the point that you don't really sure when you're going to launch it. So because it has a very limited lifetime, not more than 3 years, no modification is possible. So if you want to really modify it, you need to make a new submission. As it concerns improvement, I would say, or simplification of procedure, there is a requirement for the Bureau to publish our findings no more than 4 months from the date of receipt of complete information. So this is just provide more visibility to the operator or user what is actually going to happen with what is actually happening with his filing in ITU. And of course, because normally people may have a very strict time frame for launching the satellite, they expecting to get as much comments from other concerned administration as soon as possible. So there is also requirement to the Bureau to publish comments to API on ITU website as soon as possible. Because it has limited lifetime, there is no need to request the Bureau to suppress this API or this notification which was following API. Automatic suppression will be done by the Bureau after an expiry. There are certainly last conference 2019 was very effective in terms of adopting new Appendix 4 data elements, which supposed to, I would say, in some cases, supposed to make orbital description of non-GSO more complete. For some cases, it was, I would say, facilitating technical analysis which are undertaken by the potentially affected administration when they receive API. For example, there is one particular parameter which is identifying whether non-GSO orbit is using sun-synchronous orbit or not. And in case if it's using sun-synchronous orbit, what is the local time of ascending node or descending node? This is a very, I would say, useful parameter for the Earth observation mission, because normally you create your short observation mission with some power requirement, which is they need to follow, I would say, sun to make to be able to do constant measurements. And also conference identified additional frequency band. This was mentioned already by Jorge on Tuesday. I would go here quickly. And yeah, this is it. Was explanation for short duration mission. Again, this is a general, I would say, path which newcomers could follow when they planning to create their first, I would say, maybe academia satellite or maybe Earth observation satellite, which is also quite popular these days, or even amateur satellite. This is actually a good path to start with, and a good path to get a better understanding of the radio regulation procedure and what is actually how it is to create its own satellite project. Coming to coordination approach, this is much more complex subject. It's basically, it was already mentioned by Mehtab, we have different coordination provisions depending on the service with which we need to coordinate. So if, for example, there are requirement to coordinate with GSO, this requirement comes under provision 9.12. A, if there is a requirement coordinate to another non-GSO, this requirement comes under the provision 9.12. For the terrestrial services, there is similar provisions. They are not, I would say, very common in radio regulation, but provision 9.14 on 9.21c, this, if you see in this footnote, there is a mentioning of this provision, then you need to coordinate with terrestrial services. For example, there is such requirements in the 1518 to 1525 megahertz. This is also quite popular band nowadays. When we come to the telecommunication services, I would say in the frequency bands which are used on the together with geostationary satellite orbit, here procedure is slightly more complicated. Of course, we have a coordination between non-GSO itself under 9.12, but in most of the cases, there is no coordination with a geostationary satellite orbit. Sorry, this coordination is either, I would say, I wouldn't say replaced, but I would say there is another regulatory, I would say, condition to protect GSO, which is a hard limit, and we would talk about a bit later regarding hard limits. But basically, as you see in most of the bands, when we actually talk about mostly populated bands by geostationary satellite orbit, there is a regulatory regime which is establishing coexistence between GSO and non-GSO. Again, coming back to the conference 2019, there was new regulation adopted for the non-GSO. So which is relating to so-called QV band. This is a band above 37.5 gigahertz. There is no new allocation. This band were allocated in general to fixed satellite services and mobile satellite services. So this band could already be used by non-GSO, but because there was only requirement which is based on 22.2, which is unconditional protection of GSO from non-GSO, there was a request from the I would say community to develop, to make this requirement to identify what is exactly level of interference which is required by GSO. And conference 2019 adopted new hard limits to protect GSO from non-GSO in this band. Also, this introduced new coordination procedure under 9.12 between non-GSO, fixed satellite, and mobile satellite service in this band, in some of the bands. Perhaps I'll skip here because noting time concern. So another important subject which was considered between, I would say, which was evolving with a new filing submission which started in around 2014-2015. This is a bringing into use and evolution of design of the system. When we consider bringing into use question, this was heavily studied within ITUR. So because of a lot of submission at the end of 2014 and 2015, there was a valid concern whether this is something which is need to be looked into it from the perspective of efficient orbit use. So there was a concern that more regulation for non-GSO might be required to prevent warehousing orbit spectrum and avoid paper satellite. And several questions were posed at that time. What are the conditions of bringing to use? What is it? Whether we can change orbital parameters during coordination? What we should actually notify at the end? And also there was concern that we may not fit when we talk with respect to bring it to use as such. For example, from GSO perspective, you bring into use your assignment when you launch your satellite and you use all your assignment on the satellite. But from non-GSO perspective, because you may have many satellites or several satellites or even 100 satellites, bringing into use all these satellites together within 7-year period maybe not so I would say feasible or actually realizable. So all these questions were studied between 2015 and 2019, And the conference 2019 decided on new resolution 35, which is basically implement procedure for, I would say, progressive constellation deployment since date of bringing to use. So it would require any system to deploy at least 10% of satellite within 2 years from bringing to use, and 50% within 5 years from the date of bringing to use, and 100% needs to be completely deployed within 7 years from since date of bringing to use. So this is kind of it's called milestone-based approach, and it was basically to ensure that there is a balance between prevention of radio frequency spectrum warehousing, and also it's provide a proper functioning of coordination mechanism, and also it considers that operational requirements may be developed within non-JSO system. Nevertheless, this question is not yet totally complete. ITU still need to study tolerances for certain orbital characteristics of non-JSO space station, whether the orbit can change, and also to monitor possible post-developments of this milestone procedure. When we consider tolerances, not all the tolerances could be very, I would say, sometimes we are not dealing with tolerances. Sometimes we actually need to modify design of the system. We may need to change our orbital parameters, or we may completely change the structure of our system orbit. We can change the number of orbital planes, increase or decrease the number of satellites. All this modification would require you to actually to submit new CRC. But in this case, if you submit new CRC, you would lose your original date of receipt, and you actually lose your date of priority. So what to do in this case? And for this particular question, also there was some developments in the past years, and which basically allow modification of non-geostationary satellite system without losing its date of protection or priority date, if it's subject to coordination. Here we're talking about particularly only with respect to systems which are subject to coordination. So there is a guiding principle in rule of procedure on number 9.27, which says that when the modified frequency assignment are subject to coordination, the condition to keep the original date is to have a general obligation to effect coordination before notification, and we don't need to do additional coordination if the nature of the change is as not to increase the interference to or from the assignment of another administration. This looks very complex if you look into this wording. I mean, not always clear, but for comparison, this regulation was used already quite often when we talk about coordination under 9.7 between GSO. We used criteria of delta T over T. So basically, when you modify your parameters of GSO, if you able to demonstrate that you are not increasing delta T over T versus another geostationary satellite system, then you may maintain the date of protection will be maintained. So for non-GSO, it's slightly complicated because there is no, I would say, coordination trigger such as coordination arc or delta T over T. Coordination is established, coordination threshold between non-GSO is established based on frequency overlap, mostly in most of the cases. So the question is, when, for example, I need to study an effect of changing my orbit to whether I'm going to increase interference to another non-GSO system, what should I use? In this case, the Bureau presented to the radio regulation boards in its view on this particular subject, and it was the Bureau informed that for such kind of demonstration, what could be acceptable is just if administration present technical studies which actually demonstrate that there is no increase of interference. And in fact, using this approach, we already, since 2017, we received 9 requests for modification, and these are very detailed requests which contains all technical studies required with respect to each and every satellite system, whether it's non-GSO or GSO, which is with the aim to demonstrate that there is no increase of interference. And basically, since there is no increase of interference, we can maintain original data free seed. So this is just to demonstrate to you how it is important actually in our evolving vote, especially for non-GSO, when we are basically submitting, let's say 3 years ago, we submitted coordination requests, but nowadays, because, okay, we have even technology improving, so we can change something. So we can decrease our orbit because we believe that we could actually, because launching is become cheaper, we could more frequently replace satellites. So maybe we should actually kind of benefit from this situation. So this is during 7-year period of coordination of the system. Design of the system may change, and current radio regulation allows you this, gives you some flexibility for such to accommodate such change. At the same time, another possibility is that during coordination, you're not sure actually, it's the beginning of coordination, what would be the final system design. You have several options, but you haven't designed yet what you're actually going to bring to use. So for this case, you can actually submit for coordination several orbital configuration and actually decide whether you are going to use any of this orbital configuration at the stage of bringing to use. So there is some additional data elements which were adopted by the conference 2019, which allows you to actually indicate whether you're planning to use single configuration or you haven't decided yet, and that's why you're submitting several configurations. Here in this part, I would like to just mention orbital parameters which are define non-GSO itself. First of all, I think probably I should start with a new parameter adopted by the conference 2019, which is called indicator whether satellite system represent a constellation. You see that constellation is included in quotation mark, but this is because it's not really may not be a good definition of what is actually is going to describe, but this was actually it was good for the conference decision. So, but for whoever understanding, it may not describe exactly what it's supposed to be. According to the Appendix 4 data element, constellation is described satellite system for which the relative distribution of the orbital planes and satellite is defined. So, for example, if we consider, let's say, I don't know, if you consider you have a project of launching 3 amateur satellites, so you just wish to have several satellites in orbit. You don't really need, you're not concerned with whether you need to provide uniform coverage of globe, and in order to make sure that each of the, let's say, each time and everywhere you should at least access to either of the satellites. So in this case, you don't care. You're just launching several satellites and for testing, for example, just to kind of to prove certain technologies. You don't care about actually how the satellites will be positioned in the orbit relative to each other. You just need to make them operational and do some studies. In this case, of course, this is not a constellation. They're not intended to provide uniform coverage 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. So yeah, this is one example of non-constellation. Another example, non-constellation, maybe it's also could be launch vehicle, because it's only one satellite at the end. So it's because it's just a vehicle which could be used for the launching. So yeah, so this is actually what it is. But itself, it's quite clear that for constellation, we would never consider constellation for science mission, because science mission are normally it's 1 or 2 satellites, nothing more. And for science mission, it's not really important whether your service area, it's important what is your position versus between Sun and Earth. So it should be more or less the same. When we consider radio navigation satellite services, mobile satellite services, and fixed satellite service, for these services, it is very important to establish coverage, certain coverage. So normally for the global navigation system, you may need you need to ensure that each user which is operating your system will be visible, and he can be provided with a service 100% of time. So in this case, you need to provide uniform coverage of the sky. Amateur satellites is perhaps also not very couldn't be considered as constellation. Yes, this is just a graphical example when it's so-called Walker constellation, when we have satellites which are kind of rotating around Earth in very uniform, very well-defined manner. When we define orbital, of course, there are certain elements which are defined. Why it's actually so important? Because this is all these parameters define how your service will be provided, and actually modifying either of these parameters very slightly could actually affect significantly the level of interference your system can generate or can actually could receive. So when we talk about orientation orbital space, this is inclination. This is something which is you're also familiar from GSO, because for GSO we have a very small inclination. Mostly it's just 0 degrees, but radio regulation allows some inclination up to 15 degrees. So it defines inclination, also defines a service area. So the larger inclination, the more global use. So the larger areas on Earth could be covered by your system. I will skip here. Perhaps you have you can consult this presentation later on, because I'm already. Yeah, this is apogee perigee, very important parameters as well. When we talk about elliptical orbits, there is an important parameter called argument of perigee, which is actually defining your active arc in orbit. And once you define active arc, you can actually establish coverage of these particular regions with very high degree of coverage. Yes, I would like to stop here. I already talk about sun-synchronous orbit. This is just to list this particular element, just to make you aware that this was improvement in terms of describing in more detail parameters of the system, which could be useful during, I would say, API procedure. Coming to the system flexibility, when we can actually change orbit, and for whether it's possible or not. Normally changing orbital parameters except central body may require submission. So it's if you change, for example, central body, I refer to the reference body around which satellite is going to rotate. In most of the cases, this is Earth. It would require you to resubmit API. However, if system is not subject to coordination and you are changing some orbital parameters, it doesn't require to resubmit API. So you may change it quite easily. So without any without submitting additional API, just make sure that you submit the notification exact parameters you're planning to use. So this particular regime is applicable to SDM application, for generally to all other non-GSO which are not subject to coordination. And as explained before, if you change orbital parameters, which we just were listed here in the system, which is subject to coordination, you may need to resubmit your coordination request. This is just a table to consult. Just again, it's not each case is a unique case, but normally there is a rule that for API and SDM, if you change orbital parameters, you normally don't need to submit additional information API. But as I mentioned, for coordination, actually changing any of these apogee, perigee, inclination, RAN, argument of perigees would require normally to submit modification. This is the last part of my presentation, but probably I will just describe what is the procedure. I mean, there is a lot of technical details in this particular part of my presentation, so it's probably, perhaps it would take quite a lot of time to explain in detail. But as I mentioned, there is in frequency band, in most common used by GSO and also used by non-GSO, for example, KU band, 1095 to 1275 gigahertz, so maybe KU band 19.7 to 20.2, which are shared by GSO and non-GSO. There is no coordination between non-GSO and GSO. This is kind of replaced by the hard limits, which are called equivalent power flux density limits. This is considered in Article 22 of radio regulation. These are very important complex. It's quite technically complex too. It's basically because it actually try to take into account more detailed presentation of your non-GSO satellite system in order to calculate exactly what will be the level of interference you're producing towards GSO and decide whether this level of interference is acceptable or let's say is harmful or not. So as more details can be found in Article 22, but here we actually dealing with the aggregate effect. Because non-GSO may operate with many satellites, this effect could be different. Interference could be changing in time, and also it's maybe coming from many satellites. So this particular features are taken into consideration. Limits are established in Article 22. The way they're presented, they're quite similar to what you see in Article 21 to protect terrestrial services, but if you see, there is a certain percentage of time associated to each of the limit figure contained in Article 22. This is just to take into account that interference from non-GSO is not constant in time. It may be changing because geometry of non-geostationary satellite system is changing in time. Actually, every interference path is considered. So in case of downlink, we are dealing with the protection of receptor of the GSO station. And in this case, we could calculate interference from as many non-GSO satellites as visible from this GSO station. When we talk about non-GSO EPFD uplink, in this case, we are dealing with many stations operating in non-GSO, which could interfere with the GSO satellite. And again, there is also a possibility that in some frequency bands, there could be interference path could be between non-GSO to GSO satellite orbit. So when we non-GSO transmit in downlink, at the same time, it could create to the receiving GSO station. There are some frequency bands which are actually could be affected by this. Noting the time, perhaps I should stop here. There are some more explanation given in this presentation regarding EPFD concept. Just would like to bring your attention to the material which is available on ITU website, which is explaining in more detail this particular concept. There is specific web page dedicated to the EPFD software. There is a forum available. Also, there is a we are planning to, the Bureau is currently working on kind of aligning web resources relating to the non-JSO in general. So we expect that maybe in the coming months you would have more, I would say, structured, more complete information on ITU website, which could help you to decide whether frequency assignment subject or not subject to coordination, which could give you some more learning materials. Thank you for your attention. Please note my email here for any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timur. And again, we see there is a lot that is applicable for the satellite services. And I think there's a lot for us to learn. We are into a bit of overtime, and but I'll try to take the opportunity, Timur, to see if you can give some quick answers to some questions that have come up. Santiago is asking if in practice it has been possible to share radio spectrum between non-GSO and GSOs, for example, in the KA and KU bands.
Yeah. Yes, in practice, we already have non-GSO satellite in fixed satellite service, which are operating KA and KU band. And existing regulatory regime, which is hard limits to protect GSO, demonstrates that it's actually possible, right? But as I mentioned, situation is evolving. We have mega constellation, and we hope that this regulatory regime, which is equivalent power flux density limits in Article 22, will continue to protect GSO, and it's going to prove that this regulatory regime quite efficient in this case. But this example exists in practice already.
It does, okay. And how has ITU dealt with non-GSO providers who have failed to launch all of their constellation? That's from Alicia from Jamaica.
Currently, the requirements of bringing to use for non-GSO satellite system, which is subject to coordination, is only to launch one satellite. But then resolution, once you launch one satellite and once you confirm to the Bureau that you at least launched one satellite with all frequency assignment on board, then we consider that this satellite system is brought into use. And then after this, what we have is just a new resolution 35, which is established milestone approach, which tell you even after we confirm that your system is brought into use, you have an obligation to actually launch all, at least 100% of your constellation with some exceptions in detail in the resolutions, which is quite complex. So I'm not sure whether there is something which is we already experience when we consider failed, whether operator failed launch of all of the constellation. Operator could fail to launch one satellite. Yes, there were some examples, but we never been in a situation when we consider that operator has failed to launch all of the constellation. But this is something perhaps maybe happening in the future.
Right. There are a couple more. On one of your slides, this is from Michelle, I think from Canada. In one of your slides, you have a summary of the coordination procedures and 22.2. Could you confirm that 9.12a does not apply in the bands 27.5 to 28.6?
Yeah, just let me check the slide. No, I mean, yes. So basically this is no, I mean, there is a mistake each time I actually presenting on this slide. I have a comment that there is something wrong. Yeah, I think in this particular frequency band, equivalent power flux density limits are applicable. So I mean, there is no coordination under 9.12a because I mean they could not basically either you coordinate or you protect using hard limits. So.
Right.
But you cannot have both actually. So.
Right. So in this band, you do not have 9.12a. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. There is no 9.12a.
Right. Okay.
This mistake. Yeah. Thank you.
And how does ITU see the satellite sector developing between GSO and non-GSO? Is it that one would remain dominant, or what, you know, how does ITU have any view?
Yeah. Well, I would say there is no view on ITU on this, but of course what we're actually experiencing, we see that there is synergy between actually GSO and non-GSO. So we see that many GSO operators are becoming more and more interested in actually non-GSO. So I don't see that there is some kind of course there could be competition, but there is also another vector of development here is collaboration between two. So I mean, one could augment another, for example. So there could be different development vectors and basically, I would say, development possibilities for both.
Right.
I don't know if it's.
And I got a question from Isaf Ali. I believe, Isaf, your question relates to your being able to see the answers, especially typed answers to the Q&A. I believe that is possible. What we will try to do is save those and maybe post them as well with the records of the sessions, right? I think that's a research for CTU to do within the Zoom webinar features. Finally, Timur, do you think that the EPFD limits will be able to continue allowing compatibility if the number of satellites in low Earth orbits keeps increasing at this rate?
Actually, I think there was a similar question yesterday, but it was relating to Article 21, whether actually non-GSO, I think this question could protect, for example, fixed services. And the question here is a bit complex because in 2015, we reported to the conference that there are certain assumptions which have been made for the development when actually regulation was developing. So these assumptions are relating both to protect fixed service and also to protect GSO. So, I mean, the question is more complex here. Once we reported this particular issue, I think the reaction was at the time, I mean, it was noted, this particular question was noted by the conference. And from the reaction we saw during the conference, we didn't see that too much concern in this regard. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe this is something which is, I think EPFD limits, of course, they will continue to allow compatibility. But I would say there is no mechanism how to control aggregate interference. So we believe that even though we have many projects, non-GSO satellite projects nowadays, it not necessarily means that all these projects will be, I would say, realized. So, I mean, we believe that there will be some kind of number of systems which will be operating spectrum, I would say, at the same time, which would allow, I would say, coexistence between GSO and non-GSO, and non-GSO and fixed service and mobile service, for example. And but of course, this particular question was addressed during last conference when conference decided new limits in the QV band. There was additional mechanism which was introduced to ensure that the aggregate interference in the QV band will be also under control, not only single entry interference, which is produced by single system, but aggregate produced by all the system. This is something which was, I would say, missing for KU and KA band, but now it is introduced in QV band. So, but for KU, KA band, I hope that the situation will be under control because of the also because it's not so easy to establish compatibility between many non-GSO satellite systems. So it's kind of
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll be getting more from the Satellite Services Group on Monday. Tomorrow, we are into overtime already, so I think I would aim to wind up at this time and thank all the presenters we've had today and all the attendees, again, over 200 of us. Because of the PACT program and the number of people, it's not been possible for us to open the floor for people to speak. So I hope that at least through the Q&A and chat, we've been able to at least hear from the audience, the questions and so on. So I would like to bring to a close today's session and invite you back tomorrow at 9 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time, which is UTC -4, for our next session. I believe we'll be back to terrestrial tomorrow, if I remember correctly. So we look forward to you all again. Thanks to all our presenters from ITU and my support here at CTU. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 9. Thank you. Bye.